Welcome to the Any Spartan Show. This past weekend, there was the inaugural, or the pioneer, United States Obstacle Course Race World Championships. I was not there, but Josh was, and so were our two special guests. So I let them take lead, and we spent a bit of time talking about the event. Enjoy the show. If this is your first time listening to the show, thanks for checking us out. We record roughly weekly, and you get to listen to myself, Paul Jones, Sandy Ree, and Josh Chase chat about the obstacle course racing scene. We also do interviews with race directors and business owners in the OCR space. I encourage you to go and check out all of our other episodes over on podcast.anyspartans.com, and while you're there, subscribe to us. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere else you're going to find a podcast. You can also find us over on Facebook as The Any Spartan Show, and we really encourage you to leave questions in the comments that we answer every episode. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome to episode 53 of The Any Spartan Show. And for an audio broadcast, I was just led in by Josh on video, counting to his webcam, so thanks, Josh.
Hey, I do what I can.
This is a very special episode because this past weekend was the inaugural US or United States OCR Championships, or US OCR Champs, or however you want to abbreviate it. I was not there, but we have two special guests on the line and Josh who were there. So I am going to shut up for the next however long it takes them to tell you all about it. Over to you, Josh.
The reality is Paul was not there because he's not a natural-born U.S. citizen, so he was denied his application to actually come to the event.
I was told that even though everyone kept saying citizens only, they actually meant U.S. residents, and they would not have turned me away because I did ask that exact question.
All right, well, that's fair enough. Yeah, so quick introduction for those that have been living under a rock for the last 8 to 12 months. So Adrian Vianata, and I hope I'm not butchering that last name because I don't know that I've ever actually said it out loud before. Known for his founding of the Obstacle Course Racing World Championships, has decided that the U.S. is deserving of its own United States OCR Championship. So essentially the gist is U.S.-based citizens and legal U.S. residents. I'm actually reading the bullet as we see it. Paul, you have to mute so I don't hear you blowing your nose, by the way.
I know.
So Adrian and Team Brett are putting on an event much like the World Championships, where he is gathering obstacles and enters from our series that we're familiar with, like Savage Race and Indian Mud Run and Green Beret Challenge, and again, continuing with this trend of OCR United, bringing everybody into an event and really hosting something special. And he went ahead and found a ranch in the middle of Texas, pretty much the middle of nowhere, Texas, and put on this event. And he continues year after year to just raise the bar with these events. And I've got with me today Debbie Finnigan, who I believe it's her first time racing in any one of Adrian's events. Debbie, is that correct?
That is correct.
Excellent.
That was a pretty awesome event first time.
Good. So we'll pick your brain a little bit, and then we've got Mr. Stephen Russell. And Stephen, was it your first time at one of Adrian's events as well?
Yes, it was.
All right. So we've got two rookies here. So I've been lucky enough to attend the multiple OCR World Championships and was lucky enough to be down in Texas this past Labor Day weekend. But let's jump right in. So I have a few things, obviously, that we want to cover, and we'll go through obstacle details and everything. But what I want to ask first, and Debbie, I'll start with you. What was your, not even leading up to the event and everything, but you finally traveled to Texas, you get to the venue. What's your very first impression when you walk on site at this event?
It was pretty cool. I mean, just the setup alone was pretty neat to see, just how they, honestly, even just walking up to the gate, the YO Ranch gate, and how they framed in the U.S. World Championship blow-up arch, the beginning of the arch, the beginning line, was pretty neat just how they did that. just the fact of how well everything was laid out, and there's obstacles nearby that you could go check out and kind of get you excited for the next day. So that was my first impression of just walking on site.
Yeah, I think Adrian and team does great with the visual aspect of his sport. He knows, part of this sport is obviously the spectators, and he really designs a lot of these festival areas to be spectator friendly and to have, great access to all the obstacles right around. Steven, how about yourself? What did you think first timer showing up? Did it meet expectations? Did it exceed them? What was your mindset going in?
First time running a Adrian race, it was kind of intense at the beginning, but it actually exceeded anything that everybody's ever said about one of his races. You walk into it with a certain mindset, and you look at it, and it kind of blows you away on how much work has been done to make it similar, but yet dissimilar from everything that he's put on before, at least from what people have said to me. There's the similar obstacles that were in Canada, like similar dragons back and stuff like that, but he made them different enough so that people who have traveled to Canada and Ohio in the past had something new to look forward to. So it was amazing to just see some things at the beginning that you're going to have to figure out the next day.
And so let's talk a little bit about the obstacles. So one thing that Adrian and team do great, like we said, is they bring in obstacles from other racers and races that they've sort of partnered with, and then obviously they also have their own sort of original touch on it as well. And we'll kind of go through a handful of them, but if you're like me, you're constantly stalking the Facebook pages of these events and trying to find out, what obstacles am I going to see? What do I have to be ready for? What obstacles, and Debbie, we'll start with you again. What obstacles were you kind of looking forward to just from what you've seen on social media? And what was your favorite obstacle of the weekend?
That's a funny question. I honestly, like a lot of races, I kind of go into it just for the first time experience, meaning that I don't necessarily want to know what all the obstacles are. I know that I'm going to need what I need to do to do them. But when all was said and done and I went through, probably, honestly, I have two favorites. One, because I didn't finish, and the other because it was just super fun to do. So there was and I'm terrible with names, but it's the one where you had to grab both bars and go down the line, and you hit the bump, and you had to go over the bump.
Yes,
I like
that. Skyline. Yep.
Right. I like that from a fun factor. That was super fun. There wasn't a lot of technical necessarily to do it, but the other big one was Skull Valley. For me, that was a whole lot of intimidation because I'm not really there yet, but I tried my best. So I was looking forward to seeing what that was all about. I watched a lot of people go through it. I tried to go through it myself and failed, but watching people, even the elite, struggle was kind of good for me from my perspective, just because, often I go to events and go, everybody makes this look super easy, but if they were having a tough time, I didn't feel so bad that I didn't necessarily get through it the first time. So,
that's fair enough. And and I think it really hit kind of a pinnacle last year is Adrian sort of kind of revolutionized this mindset of keeping your band with his events. So his events, if you're not familiar, are all mandatory obstacle completion if you're going to be winning any big prizes. And while you can still continue your race if you can't complete an obstacle, they hand out these bands for each distance. And in this case, this past weekend in Texas, we had a short course 3K event, and then we had the long 15K event. And each racer, upon showing up and registering and checking in, gets a band for each race. And the 3K short course was a white, red, white, and blue, but a white background band. And the long one was a black band. So this mindset of having the goal not only to finish the race, but also keep these bands where they've become sort of a status symbol, I think is big. And like you said, it is interesting to see. Those premier athletes, these pros that are coming into this that are even struggling with some of these obstacles. And Steven, what about you? What obstacle was your favorite? What obstacle was your least favorite?
I have two favorites: the floating walls barring the intimidation factor when you were on the second tier about 12 feet off the ground. And then even though I failed it, Skull Valley, because for me, it was a matter of technique that on Saturday on the short course, I tried it 3 times, went up for my 4th time, and I'm like, no, I'm done. And I gave up my band right then and there. It was after finishing and watching the elites do it, you kind of figure it out by watching people and what works and what doesn't work. I'm definitely not as strong as some of these guys, but to see how they would so keep in mind there's like 2 ropes with 2 rings in between, and you got to transition from a rope to a ring to a rope to a ring or ring rope, whatever. And they vary in height, and it was just I couldn't transition from that second ring to the rope every time I tried it. So that I loved because it was more of a mental thing over physical, because I just had an issue in my mind transitioning from one to the other. But I really love the floating walls, and I love the high part of the floating walls. And most people probably think I'm sick for that.
No, and Adrian and Brett and team always have this design in mind, I think, where they want to have that one premier obstacle kind of at the end of the event. So, for instance, in Canada last year, it was Urban Sky leading into this huge slick wall. And in Texas this weekend, they had these floating walls from Hubie Cushman at Indian Mud Run and totally ramped up. So in Canada, they had the floating walls last year, but they were ground level. And, one was maybe 2 feet off the ground. The next one was 3 or 4 feet off the ground. And it just alternated, a little higher, a little lower. And this year, if you didn't see it, it was quite a build. It was 3 or 4 floating walls at ground level. And then you transition to 3 of them. So you then transition to a cargo net where you climb up a story, got to be 12, 15 feet. And then you're doing 4 floating walls, essentially just above a net. And, like you said, a lot of it is, it's a very doable obstacle, I think, for most people in the sport. But just the intimidation factor of hanging way up there and being on these, on these hanging walls, as they're called, and it being the very last obstacle after you've been absolutely murdered. And one thing I love about Adrian's courses is he has the lower body obstacles in there, but the majority of his courses are a lot of upper body stuff. So lots of platinum rigs and hanging obstacles and things like that. So, he does a great job of mixing it up. And going back to one other thing that you said, it's sort of refreshing to be able to retry the obstacles as many times as you want, because one way that you think you might get through it might be totally different, and you won't get that idea of how to complete it until you see other people going through it. And as I was spectating at Skull Valley, most of the pros, when they were going through it, were skipping the ropes completely. They would go skulls to ring to skulls. They wouldn't even acknowledge the ropes. They just had such momentum through it. Well,
did you see how some of the guys were getting on the first set of skulls? They were just grabbing the rope, pulling back, and then swinging up to the second skull, and they were on it already, where most of the other athletes were using the rope to climb up to transition to the skulls.
Yeah,
I was there for that.
I was, and I stole a little bit of that my second day, so I jumped to the third skull the first time I tried it, and the judge there, or the volunteer, yelled at me and said, you have to go back, you have to start with one hand on the rope. So I went back and started with a hand on the rope and jumped to the second skull that time before moving on. So, Debbie, what do you think after coming away from the event? You're going to Canada, I assume, right?
Yes, I am.
So what are you working on before Canada, and what are you hoping to achieve with that race coming up in about a month and change at this point?
Like always for me, it's always upper body. So a lot of the strength stuff, I'm really going to work on that for the next 4 weeks for me, because I want to at least, I'll be honest, I got through part of a lot of the rigs. I didn't make some of them, and I'd like to just get that much further with them when I'm in Canada, and that comes from grip strength, because my forearms and my hands were so tired by the time I got to some that I had nothing left to do them with. So that's my plan for Canada and next year. So I want to go back again next year and do better next year. So
Absolutely.
That's my.
Well, it seems like everybody was suffering from hand contusions or tears or lost calluses or one way or another. The line at the medic tent was always
Yeah.
The line at the medic tent was always three or four hands deep, waiting to be disinfected, bandaged, and sent on their way. Steve, what about you? You're joining us in Canada, correct?
Running all 4 races in Canada this year. Yeah.
Excellent. And what are you looking forward to, or what are you working on for something different after this weekend?
Honestly, once my hand heals, it's more like it's grip strength more than anything. Other than that, it's mind over matter, really, because you have to, if you can visualize yourself through a lot of these obstacles, or there's plenty of time to sit back and watch a couple other people go in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should be, if you can visualize it and watch a couple people, most of these things are very doable. We do them in other races. I mean, even the bone frog or battle frog race have shown up. They have both of them. So most of us have seen a lot of these obstacles already and tried them at least once, even if we've never seen them in the Adrian community type thing. So it should be not anything people have not seen yet. But that being said, it is very upper body intensive, need a lot of grip strength to get through most of these things. So I'm going to have, once my 3 holes in my hand heal, I'm going to have to figure that one out. But Savage will be the tunnel this weekend, so we'll see what happens.
And speaking of obstacles we haven't seen before, how did you feel about the yoke carry that we had to do?
For me, I'm a mule. That was my thing.
I was going to ask about the yoke carry because I heard a lot of people whining about it, and I thought that would be pretty okay.
So go right ahead, Stephen. Explain.
So the yoke carry for the men, at least initially, they had a men and a women. The men's was about 5.5 feet long, and the women's pole was, I think, 4.5. And if you think of somebody building a fence, and you have the poles that hold up the sections of the fence, think of that, about that thickness, with 2 ropes tied on either end, really thin nylon ropes holding probably, for the men, I think they said it was 85 pounds combined, and the women, they were somewhere around 60. I don't know if that's true or not. That was just conjecture. But a lot of the shorter people were having trouble balancing the yoke on the back of the neck, and it did take a toll on everybody because it was just a straight pole, no curve in it to fit your neck or anything. So it was just sitting on the back of your spine, the top of your spine, the back of your neck. It was interesting, but a lot of people were putting it down every once in a while, which for me would have been murder trying to pick that thing up again.
Yes, it was.
So I just muscled through and got to the end and put it down in the, credit to the Green Beret Challenge guys. This guy was encouraging everybody, telling everybody exactly what to do. Bring it over here, please. Put it there, please. Women take that one, men take this one. A credit to the volunteers that were actually part of the community. So, like the Green Beret Challenge guys, there was no Savage Race people that I saw, but that was a really straightforward thing. But they were there, and they were encouraging people to get through, even though some people were having a very difficult time. And the yoke, because of the weight, a lot of people had a very difficult time. And the unsteadiness, when you were walking with the weight, it would carry your cadence with your steps, and they would undulate back and forth. And if you got out of step from that cadence, it would start swinging, and it would hit you, and it would hit the person walking by. So it got very sketchy if you weren't slow and methodical. But I liked it. But like I said, weight does not bother me. So I don't know.
Deb, how did you feel about the yoke carry?
I think I put it down 3 times, and the third time I put it down, and I looked up, and I saw one of the guys from Operation Enduring Warrior, and I said, I just need to pick this up and keep going. It honestly, I'll tell you, it really, really sucked, but I was pretty much done at the end of that, and I said, I don't think I'm going to finish this race. But I saw that guy, and I said, I can't not continue, because I'm looking at him going, he's working so hard to finish that I just got to suck it up and keep going. So I'm hoping that they don't make that any longer, because a quarter of a mile or what it ended up being was long enough. But
it was a quarter mile out, quarter mile back, and that was after they shortened it the night before, they said, by half.
Yeah, so Adrian said, I told Adrian after the race, he always asked for feedback, and I said, that yoke carry was the worst thing I did. And he goes, listen, that's half as long as I had it last night. We just didn't have enough material. So a half a mile of total walking with that thing. And like Steven was saying, you know, I had a good pace for a little bit, but once you start to stumble or you lose rhythm, these bags of rocks just start swinging back and forth, and you put it down, which seems all well and good. It's like the bucket carry. You put the bucket down, and you can just pick the bucket back up. It's not a big deal. This yoke carry, you had to get under the thing, get it back on your back, and essentially do a squat from the sitting position to get this thing back up and running. It was one of the most intense carries that I've ever done in this sport so far. And I don't know if we're going to see this in Canada, but if we do, I would hate to have this with elevation involved. And John, I hope Adrian doesn't take that as a clue. But yeah. And then on top of that, he threw in a rec bag carry towards the end of the race. Probably
I wanted to ask about the rec bag carry. I heard a lot that this was pretty gnarly.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it too.
You're like me, Steve. We like the carries.
Yeah, and the rec bag carry was, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. So one thing they did in Ohio a couple of years ago is the rec bag carry, the intention was it couldn't hit the ground. So you were given a rec bag, and you had to climb over a 4-foot wall with it, and it couldn't touch the ground. And you had to climb up over this ladder wall and navigate like a sandbox and stuff, and you could not let it touch the ground. So they did a little bit of that this time. So they had a couple walls that you had to get it over. They said nothing about it not being able to touch the ground. But the real kind of treacherous part is the hills in Texas. And there's not a lot of hills, obviously, so it's just kind of craggy ravines more than anything. Managing those with a 50-pound rec bag, and there was only 50-pound rec bags. Women got the same weight that men got. Made it a little bit of a treacherous go. And then at the end, you had a little one of those little tunnels that you had to also drag the rec bag through as well. So it was a good carry, but if you did not do it, there was no time penalty. It was disqualification. So if you didn't do the rec bag carry, you were considered not DNF, but DQ'd, I guess, as far as timing and tracking purposes go.
That's how they've done it in previous years too. That rec bag carry was always mandatory. Yeah.
And shameless plug for a little product placement here. They were branded OCR World Championship rec bags, but they're beautiful. They have the green colored,
so they changed
stitching along the sides. They have the OCR World Championship tag. So
they're also the ones that'll be for sale in Canada. Yeah.
Right. So if you're looking to buy one, these are pretty cool. He had a ton of them there. I don't know that he needed that many, but obviously they're coming to Canada with us and probably coming home with us in one way, shape, or form, I'm sure.
Yep.
What about you guys? Kind of lead me through this. So tell me about just your experience overall. What was one thing that was maybe unexpected, but I'm a big fan of the spectator side of this, but tell me a story about what you guys loved about the event just overall.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Oh.
While Paul blows his nose.
No, honestly, for me, like always, it's meeting people and connecting with friends from other parts of the country. So for me, I was lucky. There was about 5 or 6 people that I knew from other races or other Facebook pages and things like that. And even there, I just met a few people that were friends of my other friends. So for me, it's always about, who do you get to talk to, who do you get to see. I didn't really realize Josh was going to be there until really late in the game, like the day of or the day before. So it was nice to see him there as well as up in New England Farm. So for me, there's not really a story other than it was just nice to talk to people and even people I didn't know. So for me, that's a huge part of this. That's why I do it. I like the social aspect of it. So.
What about your stay at the ranch? How'd you feel about the venue?
Mean the ranch we actually stayed at, or the ranch we raced at?
Well, tell us both, because I know you guys had a pretty sweet abode to stay at while you were there.
We did. I think for me, the funny part is I forget that Texas is so big, and things literally do go on miles and miles and miles, and like the driveway just kept going on, both driveways for miles and miles and miles. Like, who does this? But the ranch house we stayed at was really nice. It had a lot of bedrooms, tons of bathrooms, lots of space. It was really beautiful. It was nice to, be 20 minutes from the venue versus an hour and a half like some people were, because they were still in, either San Antonio or, Steve, I forget the name where you guys didn't get gas.
Kerrville.
Kerrville. That's where I stayed. Kerrville was gorgeous. There was no gas, but it was gorgeous.
Yeah, it seemed to be the theme of the weekend, no gas. And then the space where the actual race was held, the ranch was beautiful. It was kind of really cool to see which seemed to be the joke of the day, at least in our house, was the loose animals. There was a big joke about the fact that all the deer are running around and the deer and everything. And just seeing the animals, we did go on a safari that they had set out for us in the afternoon, which was really neat. Got to see the giraffes and feed them and kiss them or whatever you did, I guess. So I really liked it, but to me, being that far without consistent cell service was a little hard. So.
What about the heat? How'd you deal with the heat during the race, Deb?
I'll be honest, that's probably what killed me the most. I have most people know I have asthma, and I think that just having that heat and all the dust was just really what killed me. So I was just pleased to finish the race underneath all that heat and realize that maybe Texas in August is not my thing.
Yeah, it's funny because like we've raced up here in 95-degree weather, right? Like the Spartan Super last year was a super hot day, but compound that with kicked up dust and different pollen for whatever ridiculous trees or whatever are down there, and it definitely makes for a whole different dynamic. So, Steven, what about you?
I did.
Well, for me, it's one of those deals where when are you ever going to, how many chances in life do you have to do the first, do something for the first time, because we're technically what they call pioneers, right? Because, the whole nod to the South and blah, blah. I was stationed in Texas 25 years ago in the Army, so the heat, I hate the heat, but I got very used to it very quickly because I was down there for a while. That being said, Texas is Texas. There's a lot of open space. I mean, think about one thing to put things into perspective. YO Ranch was 5,788 square acres. That's like 60 square miles, people. That's a big thing.
That's Rhode Island.
Yeah, pretty much. From the road into the venue where you got the bus was about 9 miles. That's how big this place is. And they used a lot of the property, and it was used well. They had us go up, I believe, the only huge hill there, and then we were up on a couple of ravines. It was just the whole thing was amazing. And from the get-go, going on Friday night, checking in and being able to walk around to walking around after everybody was done on Sunday, it was just one of those events where you need to go and don't make any excuses not to go anymore. It's just like all these people nowadays saying, I should have gone to World, or at least next year, they might be saying, if they don't go this year, I should have gone to World when it was over here versus Europe or Australia or Asia or wherever it might be. You're never going to be able to find something like an experience like this unless you actually take the chance to do it. If you don't take the chance, the only thing you have left is living vicariously through the people that come back, which I know a lot of people don't have the money or the opportunity to do things, but if you can, do it, and do it for nobody else but yourself, because you won't be disappointed.
Funny fact about that highest hill on the ranch, do you know what the name of that peak was called?
No.
I shit you not, it's called Gobbler's Knob. So just to kind of step back, yeah, I actually, so the Airbnb where I stayed, so Molly and I stayed in Kerrville, which was about 40 minutes, closer to 50 minutes when you factor in the 10-minute drive from the road to the ranch itself. So we stayed in this house, and the gentleman has a map up, and on the map was YO Ranch, and I kind of looked at it, and then I saw this little mountain peak, and it had like the elevation I think was like 600 feet, and the name of it was Gobbler's Knob, and I was like, that can't be real. And then when I looked up where we ran, that was the name of the mountain. So random fact of the weekend. But to kind of step back, just so everybody kind of has an understanding of where this was. So if you go and Google it, YO Ranch in Mountain Home, Texas, what it essentially is, like Stephen was saying, is it's a big game ranch. It's 5,700 acres, and as you drive down the road to the ranch and the headquarters, you are driving through open livestock territory. So on the side of the road, it is not uncommon to see, and we saw plenty of them, huge Texas longhorns and these, big bucks and antelope, and I'm probably getting most of these animal names wrong. There were zebras on the side of the road. There were, there's a giraffe that they do a safari for. So you are in primo, nature preserves / Texas big game hunter territory, and very rugged land, and you guys probably experience it as you're running, just constant foot adjustment. You've got rocks everywhere, you've got unstable terrain, you've got cactuses, you've got bushes where if you when we go through Killington next weekend, I'm not going to have any hesitation about grabbing a bush and pulling myself up the mountain. You grab a bush in Texas, and they all hurt you. They all have these stabby prickers, and
they bite back.
Yeah. So it was definitely new terrain for me, and these are, like you were saying, Stephen. These are those events where it is great to see all the coverage on social media and see all the videos, but experiencing it firsthand is really a true privilege, I think. And how did you guys feel about? Did you get a chance to watch any of the pro races? Because what they did, Adrian had talked about this at Worlds last year, but he did the pros for the short course actually at the end of the day. So everybody in the age groups got to run first, and then they did the pro men and the pro women at the very end. So everybody got to kind of spectate, and then flipped it, and then Sunday morning for the long course. Obviously, the pros went first because they're out there for a little bit longer. But did you guys get a chance to watch the pros, and what's your experience of that, if you want to talk about it, Deb?
My experience is I've never actually even watched the pros, and I'm not 100% sure why that is. But for me, it was pretty amazing. The only person I can remember is Hunter McIntyre, and that's only because I was standing there waiting for the men to come through, and this woman started talking about him. And she's like, oh, he's really great, he's really fast, he's really quick. And then when Sunday came around and I'm waiting, and all of a sudden he starts running through, and it's probably less than an hour into the race for the 15K course, I was totally amazed at how fast those guys could run and get through the course. So it was neat to see them all do their thing, but just for me, I didn't realize how fast they really were. So.
Yeah, and it's, like I said, Adrian does a great job of putting the obstacles in place for spectators to see and to watch them come. Like Hunter came over that 10-foot terrain wall and just threw his legs over the thing with reckless abandon, and hit the ground and kept running and was up that gauntlet wall, and Conquer the Gauntlet people brought in probably this 20-foot slick wall to get up and over. And to just see them navigate, like, he's through Skull Valley in 20 seconds, and Killian is running up right behind him and is just as quick. And, same with the carries. They'll just throw these heavy weights on their back, and boom, they go through it. And I listened to Hunter today on the ORM podcast, and he was saying, he's like, I hope short course becomes a bigger and bigger thing, because short course is my thing. And he had some generous words for Ryan Atkins and John Albin, and was calling them out by name and saying, I'm going to beat you in Canada on the short course. That's my forte. So, but it makes for great, viewing in person to see these guys just tear up these courses that take us, twice, 3, 4 times as long to navigate. So,
he finished the short course, I think, 17 minutes or something. So 16, 17 minutes.
Yeah, so he did half of my speed on the short course, and I was huffing and puffing and wheezing by the time that thing was over. So, what about? So let's talk material goods. How'd you guys feel about what you took home in terms of swag and memorabilia from the event?
So I have one complaint, and I mean, I'm sure this has been brought up before. It's not really a complaint; it would be a suggestion. You know how everybody, it's the whole, you cut the band off and it's a matter of pride if you get to keep the band. I actually talked to a lot of people, and it wasn't just spots that we were talking to that were saying, if it would be nice if, even though you get it cut off, that you get it back as a kind of, I for some reason, I think this has been talked about before, but I mean, there was a lot of people talking about it, and it could be because they've never been to Worlds before, but I don't know.
It's definitely come up.
It would be a nice thing to be able to get the band back, even though it's cut, and you could use it as like something to focus on for your training for next year, or I don't know, maybe not, but it was just something that was thrown around. And will it ever happen? Probably not. But you could make a lot of smiles, a lot of frowns go away, and people have smiles that they can actually say, this is something that I accomplished, but I need to work on it. And,
I don't want it.
I don't know if that's true.
No, I think keep them, make them earn them. I think we've had this conversation with Adrian. I don't know if it was on the podcast or face to face at OCR Worlds, but no, he's not about giving people. I mean, he may have changed his stance by now, but when we talked to him, he wasn't interested in giving people bands just for crossing the finish line, even cut bands. It's like, no, keep them. They don't get them back. It's when I was a volunteer last year, there's strict instructions. No one keeps a cut band. You only keep a band if you earn it.
And it definitely did come up last year. I know we definitely asked him on the podcast, I think, and some people asked him, and I know some people asked this past weekend as well. We're looking to see if they can just have it, even to put it up on a trophy case as I still lost, but here's my motivation. So
no, I think kudos to him. He's got a line. He's going to stick to it and make you earn it. Which means I'll never have one. So let's put it out there.
And Adrian's usually pretty flexible, right? If he feels like something's not going the way of the athlete, sometimes he tends to bend. But maybe this is his line in the sand that he's going to stick with. You never know.
This is important to him.
That's all. Well, that's good, right? I'm just it was a topic that was brought up. That's all.
Yeah.
Deb, how about you? How do you feel about the medals you got and whatever else you ended up taking home for the weekend?
I love the medals. I kind of wish they had more colors. They were so big. However, I'm not going to complain about that too much. But I guess the biggest complaint for me is the t-shirts. Only because being not a short female, I didn't realize that when you order the t-shirts up front that they order them as men's and women's. But it doesn't explicitly say that on the website. They assume you know that. I didn't know that. Had I known that, I would have done something different than I did. So my women's large shirt fits my 8-year-old daughter.
Oh.
As a dress. She can wear it as a dress. So, but had I known that was the case, I might have gone to them or put something in a note that I wanted men's large. Because I was assuming I was ordering men's or unisex t-shirts. So I did mention that when I was there, and she said, yeah, a lot of people, we had a lot of complaints on that because they assumed that women got women's shirts and men got men cut shirts. So And so that was my biggest complaint. Other than that, I loved getting the medals. That was really awesome. And I did talk about the bands too, that it would have been nice, but I kind of get it. It's kind of a pride thing, so I'm okay with that. So other than that, I think they did a good job. They really did do a good job.
How did the format work of having 3K on Saturday and the 15K Sunday?
How did it work?
Yeah, was it? I mean, because the 3K is usually Friday and the 15K is Saturday, so they booked it all out a day. Was that just because of the holiday weekend, or?
I would imagine, and to be honest, thankful they didn't end up having it on a Friday because of all the issues with Harvey and the lack of gas and everything. Yeah. So, plus, I guess only having two events, one for each weekend. I guess with in Canada where they have 4 different unique events, I guess you kind of have to stretch it out over the 3 days. So, it's I liked it. I thought it was well done. I loved the pros going later in the day for the 3K because obviously you got to see everybody compete and you get the camaraderie of the rest of the people that have already run the course and everybody's there kind of watching. So that was really well done. Going back to the swag part of it, I ended up coming home with a nice US Championships OCR gear backpack that was brand new this year. I bought one of the 1,000 podium medal hangers. So I went through the airport with that giant metal thing sticking out of my backpack. Thank you, Spirit, for not charging me extra for that. We got a bunch of other stuff. We got a free buff from Hoorag. We got, the medals obviously are a huge piece of it. T-shirts, all the stuff. So they always do swag really well. So good weekend overall. I wish they had a little bit of a better selection for men's gear. Like they had hoodies, but the logic of buying a hoodie in Texas when it's 95 degrees out just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I did not end up buying a hoodie. I don't know, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks when they're online and it's cold out, I might cave in and grab one. But
I have yet to actually come away with OCR World's gear that I can actually wear because they never have a decent size or stock, and then it never ends up online afterwards.
They told me that they stopped at extra large.
Yep, it blows.
Well, according to somebody on site this past weekend, they said the World Championship gear is, quote, on point this year. So
yeah, it was last year too. I still don't have any.
The one thing they should have had was a hat at Worlds. I mean, in Texas. It would have been nice to have some sort of baseball hat or something.
That is true.
All right, planning for next year.
Also, one thing I'd like to point out, not related to the race, do you realize that no gas stations in Texas carry sunscreen? For this pasty white kid, not having sunscreen in the middle of Texas was a real problem. So I kept going back to the drink vendor and borrowing this poor woman's sunscreen. But yeah, it was it was an adventure, and to kind of sum it up, just the whole experience of traveling on a plane to a race and running into athletes as you're traveling, and the added kind of complications around not being able to find consistent gas it made for a great story. It's obviously unfortunate that all these things are happening in Texas at this time, but it made for just overall a really interesting experience and a kind of a shared experience that you'll have for forever, and something you can share with people. And when you see them in Canada, you ask them, "Were you in Texas?" And it'll be a great time. And Deb and Steve, give me final thoughts and give me a ranking of 1 to 10. Where do you place the race this weekend overall for you?
Final thoughts. Go if you can, and don't complain if you can't. 9.5 probably, and my only gripe was it was not on the 15K, and granted they told everybody to bring hydration, but to only have 2 5-gallon buckets of water, what do you call them, the coolers of water, and then have one with Hammer Nutrition, there was not enough water at the water stop. They ran out later in the day. That would be my only criticism. But go if you can, and if you can't, don't complain that you didn't go.
I'm complaining.
Can't complain. My final thoughts are, it was not that it was a total last-minute decision, but it kind of was a last-minute decision because I hadn't planned on going. And then I said, I really want to go to an event that I've never been to an event where I was one of the first people to actually do the event. So I finally decided to do it. So I was very glad that I did that. It was a very well-run event. Everybody was very friendly and helpful when I had questions. And similar to other races, there's an occasional volunteer who thinks they know everything and are not necessarily the nicest people on the planet. But from an overall standpoint, I think it was an amazing experience. I look forward to doing it again. I am looking forward to doing Worlds in a few weeks. And I like Steve, a 9.5. I was really disappointed a little bit they didn't have more water. I mean, I did have my hydration pack, but it would have been nice to just have a little more water. So.
Yeah, and Adrian kind of acknowledged that. So they had a water station at like mile 2, and then they had a water station at the yoke carry, but I don't think a lot of people realized it because the volunteer, unfortunately, I think was that gentleman's like young son, and I don't think he was kind of telling people that it was there. So Adrian did kind of acknowledge that they sort of dropped the ball a little bit on water, and if anything, we know he'll make it right for the next time, I'm sure. Would you guys, would you prefer to see it back in Texas again at that location, or maybe go somewhere else next year?
From a traveling standpoint, I'd love to see it somewhere else.
But you can't say the Northeast because we're spoiled. So if it was going to be somewhere else, where's it going to go?
Oh, wow, that's a good question.
New York State.
I don't know. Oregon. I don't know.
Ooh, that actually would be pretty cool. I'd be down for that. What about you, Steve?
Montana would be nice.
No, Montana might as well be in Canada at that point.
Well, think about it. You're looking for something where a lot of the country can have a different experience, right? Because once you get out of the Northeast, you lose hills and you got really flat. That's why a lot of people go to Dallas for the beach, because it's flat and they call it easy, whatever you want to say. But if you bring it to Montana in August, you have the right temperature. August, September, you have the right temperature where you don't have to worry about people overheating. You may still have dehydration, but it'll be 10 degrees cooler, 15 degrees cooler in Texas, and there's still mountains that you can use, and you have more natural terrain versus rocky terrain. And just my opinion. But,
all right, so Montana 2018.
It'll probably, knowing Adrian, since he likes to beat places 2 years in a row, it'll probably be back at YO Ranch. But wish list.
Yep. I mean, I love the venue. I love the location. I liked obviously seeing another part of the country, and I'll just have to find a way to train on working in warm weather and high dusty areas. I don't know. I'll have to start running in a basement or something. I don't know. So, but no, I mean, overall for me, it's another just amazing race that Adrian and Brett and team have put on, and I know how hard he works and how hard Rachel Ann and all of them work, and it was great to see them actually getting to enjoy their race. Like Adrian was running around following these runners through the courses and taking pictures, and I met Rachel Ann at the festival area and the check-in area, and it's cool to see them just kind of also get to realize kind of the fruits of their labor. So absolutely, I mean, if you get a chance to go to any one of his events, certainly do it, and whatever means you have to qualify, whether it's qualifying as a pro, qualifying an age group, or qualifying as a journeyman. All of the information on how to qualify is on the respective websites, whether it's US OCR Champs.com or OCR World Championships.com. But absolutely take advantage, and I'm guessing it was a modest showing, I think, as far as racers for this year. I don't doubt that after this year, just like happened in Ohio, this thing's going to blow up and will get bigger and bigger every year. And with the imminent move of the OCR Worlds to somewhere not in North America, I can imagine this next year being the one race that everybody goes to make sure that they see all these obstacles and this experience from us. So, well, with that, we hit about 50 minutes or so we'll close up shop here. And in the show notes, if you guys have any questions or any more information, certainly reach out. Love to hear any feedback from anybody else that was at the race. But other than that, for me, it's thumbs up all around, and it sounds like thumbs up from everybody else as well. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see everybody in a little over 4 weeks in Blue Mountains, Canada. So thanks, Deb. Thanks, Steve, for joining us. And
thank you.
Everybody have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Have a good night.
As always, guys, thanks so much for checking out the show. We'd love to hear what you think, so give us some feedback. Submit a question, share a story from one of your recent races or events. I think the show gets better and better with your participation, and it's not just Paul, Sandy, and myself talking. So to reach out, ask questions, suggest a topic, whatever it may be. Follow along on Facebook. We've got a dedicated Any Spottins show page, or you can join the community at Any Spottins on Facebook as well. Twitter's your thing. Shoot us a tweet at Any Spottins. And if you want to find our full library of episodes, I'd recommend either iTunes or Stitcher. So again, for Paul, Sandy, myself, thanks so much for listening, and until next time.